We are wrapping up our sermon series on the gospel according to Johnny Cash. And as I said last week, whenever we look through the lenses of these particular music groups or art or whatever it is that we are exploring at the time, we do so understanding that the people who create this music, they're not perfect. But the good news is neither are we. So we are together kind of exploring through that lens and learning about our faith through art and music, and together growing in our faith as well. In Matthew chapter 5, we are continuing the Sermon on the Mount. We read last week verses 1 through 12, and now we pick up right where we left off as Jesus is speaking to that crowd gathered at the Sea of Galilee. He says to them, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." A couple of summers ago, my family went on a vacation with family friends. We made our way driving from Kansas City to South Carolina, where we went to Hunting Beach State Park. And while we were there, we saw this beautiful lighthouse. It's one of the oldest in the U.S., and for $2, you could get a ticket and make your way up to the top of the lighthouse and have this incredible view. So we all decided, all 7 of us, we forked over our $2 each, and we said, we're going to make this trek. And so we began walking these steps around and around. When we got to the first sort of landing, the first flight of steps, after we had made our way up, we noticed that there were grate holes on these steps. You could look straight down, and this was a problem for my daughter Nico, who was afraid of heights. So as we rounded that first bend and made our way to that first flight of stairs, I heard from my daughter this anxious, scared voice saying, "Dad, I can't do this. I'm not going any farther." Now, if you know my daughter Nico, you know that she is strong-willed. And if she says she's not going to do it, that's where she will stay. She is there. And I tried my best to comfort her and encourage her, saying, "We can make it. It's just a little bit longer." It was a lot longer. We can do this together. We'll hold hands. We'll make our way up. And she was saying, nope, I'm done. I'm standing right here. And I will have to be honest with you, frustration was bubbling up. I already paid my $2. We got to go. It's not my most proud parenting moment, but that's where, hey, now you know. Be thankful you're not my child. Then all of a sudden I hear another parent speaking to their child. "It's okay, we can make it. We'll hold hands." But when I looked to see who was speaking, it was not a child being comforted, but my best friend Willis, being comforted by his wife Jen. You see, he too had a fear of heights. And if you know my best friend Willis, you know he is strong-willed and he is not going to budge. So we decided as a group that Willis and Nico would remain on landing 1, and the rest of us would make our way up. And so we did. We were charging up there, not huffing and puffing because we're all super in shape. And when we made the doorway out to the catwalk, we were treated with an incredible view of the ocean. We were watching, we could see ships far, far beyond the shoreline. And we were walking around that catwalk, and I got to be honest, my anxiety started to rise as well because my son, unlike my daughter, doesn't seem to be afraid of anything. And so he is running around, and I'm like, whoa, use the rail, man. That's what it's there for. Let's walk cautiously, gingerly. Let's be safe. And so we're just spending a few minutes together, family and friends, enjoying a wonderful view. I'm an ocean guy, and so when I see views like these, I am filled with awe and wonder, and I feel close to God in those moments. Have you ever been there? Have you ever experienced such a feeling? Then all of a sudden, in the midst of my enjoyment of God's beauty and wonder, I began to hear voices echoing up through the open door. One voice is saying, well, we made it this far, let's go a few more steps. And wouldn't you know it, I recognize that voice. You see, little did I know, Willis and Nico had conversations on landing number 1. They were talking to each other and said, you know what, I think we can go at least just one more landing. We don't have to go all the way to the top. Let's just go one more. And so they kept trading off. Sometimes it was Willis saying, come on, just one more. And once he was standing there crying out of fear, my daughter would turn to him and say, come on, Willis, just one more. We made it this far. And they would trade back and forth, crying and walking, encouraging each other, filling one another with hope until we saw my daughter's head poke out of the door as she was clutching the door frame, looking out at the catwalk, taking in that same incredible view of God's creation for about 30 seconds until she said, that's enough, let's go back down. And I said, yes, let us go back down together. Sodium chloride, NaCl, or as we know it, table salt, is one of the most stable compounds. It is impossible, quite frankly, to lose its saltiness. Jesus says, we are the salt of the earth. If salt loses its saltiness, what good is it for? I don't know if Jesus was a scientist. I highly doubt it. He was a theologian. I think he was being hyperbolic. I think what he was saying was that we have been in contact with a living, loving, compassionate, grace-filled God who knows no bounds. And because we have come into contact with such a force of love, a little bit rubs off on us. And we become salty, not in the parlance of our time, salty like rude or arrogant, but salty, flavorful. We become full of the spice of love and life, and it has a lasting effect, and it stays with us, and it makes us stable and hopeful and full of life. And Jesus says we are called to share that spice of love, compassion with the world around us, to affect the taste of the world that we encounter. And just in case the crowd gathered there wasn't really getting what he was saying, he uses another metaphor. You are the light of the world. No one lights a candle and puts it under a bushel basket. No, you find the highest point in the house. You put it on a lampstand so that you can find your way in the dark, so you can see where it is that you're going. You are the light of the world. And people will know you by your good works. But it is important for us to note as we hear these words in our context, Jesus isn't saying the world should shower you with praise for all the good things that you're doing. No. The light doesn't come from you. It comes from God shining through you. You are like a lighthouse whose mirrors are turning to reflect the light within, so that the ships far, far beyond your own sight can see and know the dangers lurking just beneath the waters, to help them find their way when storms arise, when troubles come. Lighthouses reflect the light. And disciples of Christ, we too are called to reflect the light. But how do we do this? This is the question that we've been wrestling with ever since we entered the waters of baptisms, ever since we first encountered the message of this Jesus, of God's abundant love and grace. We have been wondering and sometimes struggling, trying to figure out what it is we're called to do with this gift, this salt, this light. I imagine from time to time, you've heard messages, sermons encouraging you to go out and tell the world about God's love and faith and hope and the kind of things that you've experienced. I hope you have, because I preached a few from this pulpit. But undoubtedly, you, like I, have wrestled with feelings of, shall I say, inadequacy. We think to ourselves, well, I'm no Bible expert. I can't quote chapter and verse. How can I go out and share this message of hope and love? I'm not an eloquent speaker. I don't have all these stories. How am I supposed to go and share? I don't feel confident or brave. It's a challenge for me to go up. I don't want to be pushy or be perceived as someone who is trying to foist my own beliefs on someone else. I understand all of those feelings, and I empathize. I have felt the same. In 1970, the Johnny Cash show was going really well. Ratings were up, and as usual, he would get up some way midway through the show and do a performance of his own, a song of his own. And he was introducing the song we heard the band sing just a moment ago, I'm Going to Try and Be That Way. But before he did, he introduced the song, telling the crowd that he had heard a radio host come over the airwaves this past week, encouraging people not to leave their keys in the car because it might tempt teenagers of the day to steal the vehicle and go on joyrides. This is a public service announcement, the voice said. Johnny Cash took offense to what that radio host had assumed. He asked the crowd, imagine if someone were saying about your particular generation that you were prone to criminal activity simply because someone had left their keys in the car. That you were capable of stealing or committing a crime simply because of your age or your view on life. Johnny Cash told that crowd, perhaps we should give young people the benefit of the doubt these days. That we should learn to build relationships with them, get to know them. This is a public service announcement, he said. And then he sang this song. He strapped on his guitar and began, I'm going to try to be that way. Once upon a time, there lived a man, many years ago in a foreign land, knew how to live right, tried to be a light, gave everybody a helping hand. I'm going to try to be that way. Do the kind of things a man or woman ought to do. Say the kinds of things a man ought to say. I'm going to try to be that way. He never done anybody wrong. He tried to help everybody along. He brought out a better land to make a better man out of the rich or the poor or the weak or the strong. And he preached love and brotherhood. He went around doing good. Everywhere he went, they knew he was sent, and the people started acting like they should. in an essay by Bob Dylan that he published in the Rolling Stone magazine after Cash's death in 2003. He wrote, "Cash is what the land and the country are all about, the heart and soul of it personified, and what it means to be here." And he said it all in plain English. I think we can have recollections of him, but we can't define him any more than we can define a fountain of truth. If we want to know what it means to be mortal, we need look no further than the man in black. Blessed with a profound imagination, he used the gift to express all the various lost causes of the human soul. This is a miraculous and humble thing. Listen to him, and he always brings you to your senses. He rises high above all, and he'll never die or be forgotten, even by persons not born yet, especially those persons. And that is forever. Friends, I think we've said it every Sunday, but Cash was not perfect. He didn't always have his life together. He didn't know all of life's answers. He made mistakes, many of them. He sang songs about love and heartbreak, about addiction and pain. He sang songs about the human experience to try and connect people one to another. And he also sang songs as a testimony of his faith, for he did have a faith. Near the end of his life, he recorded many gospel tunes that he heard growing up because of his strong faith. Which begs the question, do you have to be perfect to be salt or light? Do you have to be blameless? Do you have to have it all together? Do you have to have all the answers? Do you have to be a poet or dress all in black? Do you have to have a big, loud, boisterous voice and be willing to stand in front of lots of people? Do you have to be brave? I don't know about all that. I think perhaps, maybe, all you have to do is be willing to put one foot in front of the other. Climb one more step. Take one more landing. Make your way in this journey of faith that we're on, not knowing how far it goes or how hard the climb might be at times. Be willing to trust that you're not alone. God is there with you every step of that journey, and we, as a family of faith, are with you too, encouraging you, strengthening you, sometimes carrying you, saying, we've come this far. Let's go just a little bit further. Friends, don't hide your light. Tell someone you know, a friend, a family, a stranger, of the good things you have experienced in this life, the love, the endless grace and compassion that you have felt. You don't have to be a scriptural expert or a preacher. You have everything you need. Just be the person God has created you to be. And let your light shine. Let your flavor out into the world go just a little bit farther. And know that you're not alone. It reminds me of that other song. I think I've heard Miss Kristen sing it before. I'm sure you've sung it too. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.